welcome to a Let's Wallow in Our Own Self-Pity edition of the Buckeye Fever podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dave Holmes. I like to think that now we've been doing this for a full season together, and I have tried to be very authentic and transparent. And after the loss to Oregon, I said, the sky is not falling. Let's pump the brakes. We talked about how we're going to go get a win at Penn State, beat Indiana. All will be well, and it was. So I'm not going to sit here on this episode and say this should not be a panicking, sky is falling vibe. Because the sky is falling, and as we know, the sky is made of blue. And that blue team came into the shoe and beat the Buckeyes for a fourth straight year. It should not have happened. And that's not any discredit to Michigan. But of all the years, this one shouldn't have happened. And I was trying to think of a worst loss in the shoe. And you can go back to the mid-90s Michigan, the Coop era, for sure. I think about 2015 Michigan State, when the Buckeyes were defending national champions. It was that misty, breezy day when the Spartans came in and shocked the world, kept Ohio State out of the playoff. This is on the Mount Rushmore of worst losses in Ohio State history. And it's an interesting vibe, as we're going to talk later in the show, because in the grand scheme of things, this loss doesn't mean a lot in terms of the college football playoff. We'll get to the new rankings later in the show. It does a little bit, of course, but it feels like emotionally this was a program-breaking loss, even though the Buckeyes could still win a national title. But it felt like a program-breaking loss in so many ways, because every year you have these three goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national title. And two of those goals went up in flames against a team that was 6-5 and missing multiple key players, first-round players. And I do want to talk about that. So they're missing their cornerback, Will Johnson, arguably the best player on Michigan's team. Ohio State's strength is in the receiving core. And I tweeted this out that, look, you tell me how you want to attack. I would think you want to air the ball out and go your receivers on their DBs. The problem is Will Howard didn't have it. 19 to 33, 58%, by far his lowest percentage of the season. Through the pair of picks, they were bad. I mean, Ryan Day brought Will Howard in to steady the ship. Ryan Day knew that this was a potential make or break year. And rather than hand the keys of the kingdom to a Julian Sayin, some 18, 19-year-old kid, he went out and got him an experienced 23-year-old for a game like this. And Will Howard didn't deliver. He didn't. And you look at Ohio State's makeshift offensive line against the strength of Michigan's defense, which is their defensive line. And it's no wonder Ohio State struggled to move the ball on the ground as well. And I know there's that stat that since the year 2000, the running team, who if you win the rushing battle, every game but one has won this game. I think sometimes those stats are overrated because running the ball is a game script stat. And normally, if you're winning the game, you're controlling the clock and running it. But I do think there's something to it. I just think this current version of the Buckeyes are built to beat Michigan in Lucas Oil Stadium, or maybe in the shoe in early September. But as we've seen, when it gets cold and windy and it comes down to my ability to knock your teeth out, Michigan has been a better team. And there's no asterisk here, just a mirror that you have to look into. Did Michigan cheat the last few years? It certainly seems like they did. Did it affect the game? It certainly seems like it could. We will never know the extent. You know, as I say, was Barry Bonds a great baseball player before he took steroids? Of course he was. Historically good. Was he 73 home runs good? No, he wasn't. You don't cheat unless it makes a difference. So certainly Michigan and the sign-stealing scandal matter, but that is in the past. And this game, there is no asterisk, just a mirror you have to look into. One of the worst losses in Ohio State history. So, I know a lot of you are coming to this podcast and every other podcast because you want heads on platter and blood spilled. So let's just get into that debate. Should the Buckeyes fire Ryan Day? That's what you're here for, right? You want some hot takes. Okay. I'll go full transparency again. Authentic. Love Ryan Day. I love him. I think he's a good dude who's done a lot of great things for mental health in this community. I think he's done great things in his donations that he and his wife Nina have done. I think he's a good dude who is a good leader of men, and I think he's the kind of guy you can be proud is leading your program. But he also said last week that, quote, this game is a war, and with any war, there are casualties. And I know what he meant when he said that. You can lose your job over this game. Should the Buckeyes fire Ryan Day? Okay, the case for it is pretty simple. 0-4 the last 4 years against Michigan. He did get him in year one. A lot of people are going to say that's Urban's players, okay? And then the COVID year, Buckeyes probably pound Michigan that year. Got ripped off that he didn't get to play him that year because Michigan was down and the Buckeyes were good. So realistically, could he be 2-4 right now? Yes, but the bottom line is he's lost 4 in a row. So the case to fire him is very simple. You say he can't beat Michigan. You think there's a mental hurdle with him in this game, and you get rid of him. I get that. You would say anyone can go 10-2 or 11-1 at Ohio State. You would say you fire Ryan Day because you think anyone can come in and beat Maryland, Rutgers, Nebraska, Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, even Penn State. That's your case to fire Ryan Day. And I get that case. Totally get it. The case to not fire Ryan Day is because you are afraid of what the Buckeyes could become. It's the fear of the unknown, right? It's, I don't want to break up with someone because what if I end up alone? A lot of people stay in bad relationships because they're afraid of what happens if you move on. You look at Tennessee, and when they got rid of Philip Fulmer, who brought them a national title, and Tennessee went in the tank for, 15 years. You look at Nebraska, when they thought they were too good for Frank Solich. He took them to a national title game. Nebraska has never been relevant since. The reason you keep Ryan Day is because he keeps you relevant every single year. There's some stability there. The reason you keep Ryan Day is because the world of NIL and the transfer portal is horrendous. And I have talked to so many coaches off the record. They don't like it. It is not as much fun to coach college football now as it was 20 years ago. I've talked to Urban Meyer about this off camera before. And he has said it's a different game, and I don't know if it would be as much fun anymore. It is not easy. It is not easy to deal with NIL and the fundraising and the recruiting with early signing day, which is this week, by the way. You're probably just listening to this on a Wednesday, potentially. Today's early signing day. Think about trying to lock down these recruits while you're preparing for Michigan last week. And that's not an Ohio State problem. That's everyone. That's not an excuse. But the reason you keep Ryan Day is because he has had you within a play or two or a game or two of a playoff, of a national championship, multiple times. The first episode of this podcast, I said Ryan Day's legacy is so complex because you can make the case that he's not getting it done, and you can make the case that he's 1 or 2 plays or breaks away from being an all-time legend. And now he's 0-4. So the case to fire him is easy. 0-4 against Michigan. In this town, that gets you fired more often than not. First team to go 0-4 against Michigan since 1988 to 1991, that stretch. The seniors came back for this moment. Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, JT Tuimoloau, Travion Henderson, and Emeka Ibuka. They came back for this moment, and they now graduate with 0 pairs of gold pants. I can't imagine. So that's why you fire Ryan Day. But why you don't fire Ryan Day is because he keeps you there every year. Consistency, stability, and a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, stability. The stability is he loses to Michigan every year. I get that. He also beats Penn State. He also lost 2 games this year by a combined 4 points. One of those, a road game against the number 1 team in the country. I think there's a case to be made either way. So if you came here and you thought that I'm going to put Ryan Day's head on a platter, I'm not going to do that. But I'm also not going to be Pontius Pilate and say, I can find no fault in this man. Because I can. Because they should have never lost that game on Saturday. No way, no how. I will address the brawl afterwards. A lot of people talking about that. I was there in the thick of it. I was actually recording Ryan Day singing Carmen, Ohio, because I wanted to see the reaction to the fans as Ryan went off the field and just see Ryan's reaction because I know he was distraught beyond belief. And then I see Jermaine Matthews Jr. turn around, start sprinting the other direction. I ran, and then all of a sudden I'm in the brawl, and the pepper spray's flying. I turned away. I didn't get hit with the pepper spray, thank goodness. So here's the deal. Michigan should not plant that flag. That is not classy. Period. End of sentence. Okay? I know Michigan fans will take issue with that sentence. Michigan should not plant the flag. It is not classy. Period. End of sentence. Okay? But the next sentence. It's a trivia question. How many teams in the history of college football have lost a game and then planted a flag on the opponent's 50-yard line? I would guess the answer is 0. So the other side of this is if you don't want Michigan to plant their flag, don't let Michigan come in here and beat you as a 20-point underdog. They were a 6-5 team with multiple key players out. Nothing to play for besides this game. So if you don't want them to plant the flag, beat them. You had 3 hours to stop the flag planting. And the Buckeyes tried to do it in the 5 minutes after the game, but you had 3 hours to stop that flag planting. Michigan should not have planted that flag. It was classless, period, end of sentence. Ohio State should have never been in that situation to allow Michigan to plant that flag. And now, once they plant that flag, you do have the option of how to react to it. I understand the passion. And Ryan Day afterwards said we have a lot of prideful guys who weren't just going to let that happen. I get it. That's a man check, right? I get it. Total man check. But at the same time, I don't think it's the best look for your program to lose a game you shouldn't have loved, or lose a game you shouldn't have lost, and then get into a brawl on the field after the game. I just think overall it's a dark cloud. It's a dark day on the program. I don't think it was a good day for Ohio State at all. I do want to say this. There is the case of people who want to keep Ryan Day say, well, who else are you going to get? I don't know if I always buy that because that was the Baker Mayfield debate, and I know Baker's done much better with the Buccaneers, but the Browns were right to move on. I think they were. And we're going to judge this in hindsight and say Baker's better than Deshaun. Of course. Deshaun Watson was a colossal mistake. But my point is, whether it was Baker Mayfield with the Browns, it wasn't working. Kyle McCord with the Buckeyes, it wasn't working. I saw Kyle and his coach at Syracuse chirping this week. It wasn't working with Kyle McCord. He didn't beat Michigan either, folks. And he had Marvin Harrison Jr. He didn't beat Michigan either. So I think some people are saying, who else are you going to get? I don't think that's the debate. I think the debate is, do you think Ryan Day is the right guy to lead this program? And that's a Ross Bjork question. It's not a Dave Holmes question. Again, I'm not going to be here and I'm not going to spill his blood for you today, and I'm not going to be Pontius Pilate and say I find no fault in this man. There's a fault there. He's 0-4 against Michigan the last 4 years. So it's up to Ross Bjork to find out if he thinks Ryan Day is close and 1 or 2 plays away. Because again, kickers missing kicks. Will Howard making bad throws. Was the game plan good? No, I don't think the game plan was good, and Ryan needs to own that. But did he miss the kick? He did not. Did he make the bad throw? He did not. How much of it falls on the head coach? I guess we're going to find out. The other reason why you have to pump the brakes a little bit on this Ryan Day conversation is because this team could still win it all. And I know that some of you hear that and you're shaking your head. No, they can't. Well, guess what? On Fanatics Sportsbook right now, they're the third favorite. It goes Oregon, Texas, Ohio State. So the folks in the desert out in Vegas still think the Buckeyes can win it all. Now, I should point out the folks in the desert had the Buckeyes as 20-point favorites to Michigan. Yikes. But I'm just saying that Ohio State, I sincerely think this current version of the Buckeyes has a better chance of winning a national title than beating Michigan. Guess what, folks? Michigan's not in the playoff. The Achilles heel is not in the field. Can the Buckeyes win a national title? I don't know. I mean, they lost by 1 to the best team in the country on the road in a game that they didn't play perfect. So, yeah, I think the Buckeyes can win a national title. The big thing is the mental hurdle. And this is where Ryan Day might be coaching for his job. We'll find out soon enough. I think if Ryan Day goes out in round 1 of the playoff, if I were his agent, I would be stressed. But if Ryan Day makes a playoff run here, I think the conversation will shift drastically. If he wins it all, of course he's not getting fired. You don't fire a coach after winning it all. If you make it to the national title game, that'd be pretty wild to fire a coach who just lost in the national title game. So I don't think this Ryan Day story's done. The key now for Ryan is, can he get these guys to believe in him, to buy in, to put Michigan behind them? Because again, at the start of the show, I said it feels like the season's over, but it's not. It feels like a back-breaking, sky-is-falling moment for the program. It doesn't have to be. If you regroup, you could still win a national title. Jobs could be saved. Legacies could be saved. But that is a massive, massive ask. Can Ryan Day get his guys to somehow forget the day that was on Saturday? I want to forget it. Can the Buckeyes forget it too? Well, we are going to talk about the playoff coming up next on the Buckeye Fever podcast. We're going to break down the field. How far did the Buckeyes fall, and what does the bracket look like? That's coming up next on the Buckeye Fever podcast. Welcome back to the Buckeye Fever podcast. I'm Dave Holmes. All right, new college football rankings came out Tuesday night. Let's run them down. Miami 12, Alabama 11. Yep, you heard me. 10 Boise State, 9 Indiana, 8 SMU, 7 Tennessee, 6 Ohio State, Georgia 5, Notre Dame 4, Penn State 3, Texas 2, Oregon 1. But the thing is with these rankings, the way they do the bracket, the top 4 highest ranked conference champions get the byes. So the rankings really aren't anything like the bracket. So the bracket would look like this. Arizona State at Penn State, and then the winner would move on to get Boise. You would have the Buckeyes hosting Tennessee at the Shoe. That would be wild. The winner moves on to get top seed Oregon. Alabama at Notre Dame. Winner gets SMU. Then Indiana goes down to Georgia. Winner gets Texas. And I understand why they wanted conference champs to matter. They wanted something that was out of the committee's hands. They wanted something that was black and white. We know what the objective is, and you get this reward. And I get that. And I like it in theory. But what I hate about this is the seeding is kind of dumb in that Boise and SMU, who are the 8 and 10 seed, SMU 8, Boise 10, they both get byes and have easier draws than number 1 Oregon and number 2 Texas. I don't think Boise would be too scared of Arizona State or Penn State. And SMU gets the winner of an Alabama team that's clearly beatable since they've lost 3 times. And Notre Dame, who, laid an egg against Northern Illinois. They've won the rest, but still, I don't think anyone has traditionally feared Notre Dame in decades. Meantime, Texas is probably getting Georgia in round 2, and Oregon gets either Tennessee and Ohio State, who are probably 2 of the 5 most talented teams in the country. So I do think they need to tweak the seeding here. Now, you can't do it this year. Once you start a game, you have to finish by those rules. But I would love to see them do something next year to change the seeding here. I don't know if you reseed every round like the NFL does based on the rankings, or maybe you do away with these automatic buys. Maybe you say conference champs get an automatic bid, but then not an automatic buy. I don't know. I just don't love it. I think Oregon would have every right to be angry that they're the top seed, and they could potentially get Ohio State, which almost beat them in their own building, or Tennessee, who is a more talented team than probably 2/3 of the teams in this playoff. So I don't love the seeding. It would be fun for the Buckeyes to host Tennessee. One thing the committee said that was interesting is that if teams are not playing this weekend, they are locked into their place, which by that logic means that Ohio State's going to be ahead of Tennessee because neither team plays, and that's big. So the Buckeyes now look like they are in pretty good shape to host a first-round playoff game. But still, a couple fluky, crazy things could happen in the conference champs that could maybe, knock a team down. Let's say maybe the committee decides to put SMU above the Buckeyes if they lose. There's some fluky things that could happen. I don't think they will. So it's looking like the Buckeyes highly likely to host a first-round game, which is why I said, even though they lost to Michigan, the season is not over here. Still football left to be played. That'll do it for us on this week of the Buckeye Fever podcast. We have more next week. We are going to react to the final college football playoff rankings. We will know where Ohio State plays next week on the Buckeye Fever podcast.